Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017. Today I'm going to be reading from Keep It Simple, Daily Meditations for 12-Step Beginnings and Renewal. And we are reading from December's section clearly. So December, the step that we're working on is the 12 steps. So having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Step 12 from Alcoholics Anonymous. And so December 3rd, let's get into it. And to practice these principles in all our affairs. Third part of step 12. This is a statement about us. We are now people with values. These values reflect our spiritual growth. We know how to help others. We know how to admit wrongs. We know how to look at ourselves and change our defects. We know how to live an honest life. Step 12 tells us, go use these tools for better living. Go be all you can be, enjoy life, and live a life you can be proud of. Step 12 tells us about how to have loving relationships. By the time we complete step 12, we make or regain many relationships. The most important one is with our higher power. As we grow in the program, we realize all our relationships are spiritual gifts. Prayer for the day. Higher power, I now have one face instead of many masks. Help me be a person who will stand before you with pride, not shame. Action for the day. Today, I'll talk with a friend about my new values. I will talk about how much my life has changed. That's so good. By the way, I don't read these before I record, so I am like listening to it first time with you here. And that is so powerful. Oh my gosh. Okay, a couple of things here. This is true. This is a statement about us. Actually, all of the 12 steps are statements about us. Even our resentments, all of our amends, these are all statements about us. This is all about regrounding ourselves in a new reality and in a new basis for living, right? And this is how we perceive and interact and digest and experience the world around us. And so this is about us. And for a way, this shouldn't be such a stretch considering how long we've lived in selfishness as addicts and alcoholics. I can now accept that the solution is also about me too, right? But how does this impact people around me? Because now I'm a person with values, I can help other people. Now that I'm a person of integrity with one face instead of many masks, like, whoa, that was very powerful. I can now be and show up as a whole person for others, right? And now I can live a greater peace regardless of the circumstances around me, because now I just know who I am more. I'm more grounded in self. And this thing about values, I'm actually currently going through the steps another way, and they talk a lot about values in the first step. And my sponsor, when I'm bringing stuff up to her, she's like, "Is this in accordance with your values? Do you know your values?" And I'm just like, "Oh," I like Googled values and was like, "Okay, these are my values from now on." And always at the top of that is honesty. Honesty is so important to me, and it is as a result of this work. And I can tell people who are living on a spiritual basis, people who are recovered based on the integrity of their honesty and their ability to be honest. And this is also why working with other people is really important, because we can reflect each other's dishonesties to each other. For example, I had said something to my sponsor, and she was like, and I was just had this complete blind spot to this thing. And she was like, she's like, "Do you really believe that?" And I was like, "Tell me if I'm not seeing something. I want to hear it. I want to know if I want to be called out on stuff, because if I'm not being honest with myself, like that's a huge red flag. Like I need to be the one person who can be most honest with myself over everybody and everything, right?" And so she was able to point out some things that I hadn't even really seen or noticed. And I was like, "Okay, noted. Thank you. I see that now." And it's all helping to integrate this honesty part, right? And that's a lifelong thing. I don't think that I'll ever get it 100%. I'm always going to be peeling back new layers of delusions for myself. And I think that's part of the excitement that I get from doing work like this, because I'm like, "Oh, cool, I just uncovered something new and delusional about myself. Let's see how I can transform that." And then it eventually always becomes useful because I'm able to help someone else along their way. So living in accordance to values is extremely important. We know how to admit our wrongs. We know how to help others. And you think that helping others is pretty self-explanatory. It's not actually, because why do we help others? I always have helped people. Even in my alcoholism, I was very helpful. I was always teacher's pet. I was always people pleaser. I was always the employee who did overtime and went over and beyond for clients and overextended myself for family. I was being helpful, but I was also holding a lot of grudges and a lot of resentments every time I helped somebody because I was expecting something in return, right? And so my intentions behind that helpfulness was not for the sake of being in connection to somebody else or for just doing God's will. The way that I used to help people came from a place of manipulation, basically, and like image control and control in general. It was not pure in the way that I wanted to help people. So now I can really help people. Now I can help without regard for if I'm going to get anything back. Now I can help people. Now I know when I give $10 to the guy who lives on the corner, my neighbor, he has no real way to repay me. Although he did one day because he got my landlord to hit me up one day when I had a towing notice on my car. He flagged down my landlord and was like, "Tell Vanessa her car's got a notice on it." And so that did eventually come back to me in a positive way. But anyway, there are different ways to be helpful to people, and sometimes there are not um, the purest of heart. And so now I know how to help people in recovery, how to admit our wrongs. We know how to look at ourselves and change our defects. For so much of my life, everything was externalized. Like, where is my joy coming from? My joy comes from if it was really conditional on the basis of how people around me were acting. And did they act in accordance to how I thought that they should be acting? And the reality is people are going to act how they're going to act. Like, people are going to people, and it's not going to be to my very strange and hidden agendaed ways, whether or not in subconscious programming that I think I need other people to act in accordance to so that I feel safe in any situation, right? I need to be able to find that within myself. And so maybe I can change that. Maybe when I see that I'm resentful at somebody, I can be like, oh, okay, I placed pretty unreasonable expectations on this. That was my bad. Now I can act according to that reality, right? And living an honest life. Like, this is a life, you guys. We are trying to practice these principles in all our affairs. That means at work. That means in relationships. That means with family. That means with the barista at Starbucks. That means with the neighbor that we can't stand. I don't have any bad neighbors, by the way. That is just how we operate now, and we need to be willing to let God in all of these areas. These tools that we get, that we learn through the 12 steps, these are engineered to help us build a better life. And a life needs to be holistic. It cannot just be one portion of where we show up. And so that's also why it's important. Wait, step 12 tells us about how to have loving relationships. And that's so important, again, because now relationships are not on the basis of manipulation or what can I get from you or this is what you do for me. Now they're more on this basis of, oh, I can see you and resonate with you as a child of God. We come from the same creator. We are so beautifully and wonderfully and fearfully made, right? And it's just like, oh, we are so unique. And actually, what a blessing that we get to exist at the same time. This is not really I mean, it's all just such a miracle when you can see people in that way and really appreciate them and see them in that light. And when I begin to lose sight of that fact, that's when I know that now my human kind of expectations and anger and resentment are going to creep in, and I'm going to start treating that person poorly. When I forget their own divinity, I forget their own holiness, and I try to just get them to act in a certain way that I think that I need them to act so that I feel good about myself. That's I mean, that was all my alcoholism was. It was all a constant game of chess to try to get people to behave how I wanted them to. The relationship, especially with higher power, with God, that relationship is the most important because, my prayers have evolved a lot over the years. And I've always been like a praying gal, even though I didn't really know all the time what I was praying to. I always had this distinct feeling that putting what I wanted into words was somehow helpful. I don't know. I don't know how I knew that all the time. Now my prayers have changed. First of all, I'm not doing that prayer of like, God, if you just get me out of this, I promise I'll become a nun or something. Now it's more like, God, just help me be okay and accepting with your will, thy will be done. Like I sometimes I need to be changed in certain situations. Sometimes I know that I need to learn to be okay with things when they're not going the way that I want them to. And I'm able to do that because I trust in God. I trust that God has my back. I trust that God is loving and wants the best for me. And even though it can be hard to see sometimes and it doesn't always feel that way, I really do, at the core of my being, recognize and know that to be true. And because that resonates with me on this level of that honesty, which is my value, I'm able to grow this relationship with God on a daily basis in a meaningful way. And so as we grow in the program, we realize all relationships are spiritual gifts. And that is so cool, actually, because I never really thought about that. But yeah, I do feel like I remember feeling that way. I know like when I would go to church a lot, they would always talk, they did like a certain series on how, yeah, like certain people come into our lives for very specific reasons, and we think we know what those reasons are, and we don't always know what those reasons are. And I've made more peace with that recently. Oh, I'm sometimes trying to mold relationships into what I think they should be when I can just appreciate that person for who they are and not have to interact with them. And I can just like glean the wisdom that I've learned from our interactions and incorporate that moving forward, as opposed to trying to force something with it or something. So, prayer for the day again is higher power. I now have one face instead of many masks. Help me be a person who will stand before you with pride, not shame. So important. So important. We are such shameful little creatures. It's so sad and heartbreaking. Like we forget how beautiful we are sometimes. Shame. Like it just is. I was reading somewhere that like people feel like actually we could probably incorporate a little bit more shame nowadays with the stuff that's just going around on the internet. It's just like, wow, we really need to bring shame back. And I think that that's funny because there is some type of purification process that goes through with shame, right? If I never felt shame, if I never felt the devastation of shame in my life, I wouldn't have been, I don't think, I don't know, just because I'm a person who learns through pain, I don't think that I would have realized that those are the things I never wanted to feel again and worked so hard to make sure that I was never in a position to feel that way again, right? And clearly I cannot control if and when I ever feel that way again. But I'm going to do the best that I can to my ability to prevent that. And there were a lot of actions I could have taken, such as not drinking and ending up drunk every single freaking day for the better part of 10 years to reduce my shame. Like, wow, interesting how that works when you're actually conscious and present in your own body, in your own reality. But yeah, shame really keeps us so stuck. It's a real stuckness when we're feeling that way. So I really love that it's talking about help me be a person who will stand before you with pride and not shame. And just that one face instead of many masks, that's powerful. I had so many masks. I had masks for every single occasion. Even now, still working with people or just like encountering people in general, I can feel when people are not being authentic. And it's really, I think where I used to be judgmental before, and then I went through a phase where it was just really unsafe and uncomfortable. Now I'm finally reaching this point where I just feel compassion for people who feel the need to wear multiple masks and still haven't found their face. Their one face. There's this quote, there's a story by Dennis Johnson called The Starlight on Idaho, although it also has another name that it goes by, which I don't know why it has two names. But anyway, that's the way that I know it, is The Starlight on Idaho. And he's in a rehab center and he talks about the people in the rehab center. And then he talks about there's a guy who runs off, and it turns out that he's had many like gay male lovers. And it's like, that's why that guy is so messed up. It's not that he's gay, it's that he just can't, he keeps trying to keep it hidden. It's that he keeps trying to hide from himself and from other people who he really is. And so Dennis Johnson basically sums it up to like, that's the problem. We all just need to get down to one story of who we are. And it's like, yes, that's all that we're trying to do. When we are not in alignment with our values, when we're not a whole person, we're not an integrated person of ourselves, living in honesty and authenticity, if we can't show up with who we really are, we're gonna have a really difficult time. We're just gonna have a really difficult time. It's really difficult. It's difficult to stay sober, but it's really difficult to show up in relationships, basically. So, action for the day. Today, I'll talk with a friend about my new values. I will talk about how much my life has changed. You're my friend. I'm talking to you right now. I think that's powerful. I hope that you got something out of this. Again, I'm reading from Keep It Simple, and I do recommend having some kind of literature, some kind of book that you read on a daily basis for your morning meditations or whatever. Read something, meditate on it, and then go on with your day. It helps me stay in alignment for the day so I don't get swept up by the rest of the day going wrong or going right and getting too excited about it. It happens. All right. I love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you got anything out of that or if I just rambled too long. Okay. I love you. Bye.